From the beginning, stock cars outran the police to deliver the hooch to our ancestors. So sweet. Are you ready for a trip down victory lane, where Richard Petty's winnings were insane and Dale Earnhardt put everyone to shame? Canadian Junior Handley is in the Hall of Fame. From the home of Canada's crown jewel, Ucasa Motor Speedway, live from Haldimand County, it's time for the Driver in Deep podcast. Are you ready?
Wingnutsports.com is proud to present the Driver in Deep podcast with your hosts, Alex Nagy and Mark McSporran. Hey Alex, how's it going today?
Apparently not as good as you, Mark.
That's true. You know the Buffalo Bills are fresh off a 17-3, what I would say, drubbing of the Baltimore Ravens.
The quarterbackless Ravens?
Well, yeah, they do have a quarterback.
Yeah,
the Bills took him out of the game. But I just want to give a quick shout out to the Bills because this upcoming week we're going to be playing Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. And it's been a long, long time since I've been able to do a shout out for the Bills in the playoffs, Alex. You got to give me one here. And for you listeners, like all podcasts, we are pre-recorded, and when this episode drops before the Super Bowl, I'm hoping that I'll be getting ready to cheer on the Bills. And before we leave this, I also want to say that moments before the kickoff yesterday, I received a text that just said, "Let's go Baltimore." And this is from a longtime pal of mine, and who what I would call a sports antagonist. His name's Mike Beckman. And Mike doesn't even like the Ravens, Alex. He's just one of these guys that tries to rain on the parade of other people whose teams are doing well. And I would like to also point out that on top of that, Mike's a switcher. He used to be a Habs fan in hockey, and now he cheers for the Leafs. Say what you want about that. Here's to some bad karma coming back to Mike on the sports side of things.
Well, I can understand him switching. I mean, so many people have switched to the world's team, which is the Leafs. And if he antagonizes you because your teams are doing poor, you must hear from him a lot because your teams haven't done anything for 25 years.
Well,
anyways,
we're not going to get into that.
I want to talk about the great support we've been getting from our listeners.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I know we can't thank them enough. Hopefully we'll keep delivering some great stories with some great guests, and we have great information and have a good time along the way. And our listeners will tell others to take a listen also.
Yeah. We have almost 150 people in our Facebook group.
That's great.
I know. From 0 to 150 in literally a week. Maybe that had something to do with the draw that we did for the hoodie, or for the hoodies, I should say. And congratulations to the winners there. If you'd like to check that out, just visit our Facebook page, our Facebook group. Just search for Wingnut Sports, and you'll see us all there. And hopefully you can join and be a part of it. Hey, Alex, guess what?
What, Mark?
We actually have a sponsor, and they've committed to at least 2 episodes, which is super exciting. And if anybody else would like to get involved, we have several options for you. So please send us a note or an email to wingnutsports@gmail.com if you're interested. So why don't you tell us a little bit about our sponsor?
Yeah, so we have Hunsinger's Plumbing, HVAC, and Electrical on board. Hunsinger's, for people in this area, of course, they know them. It's a family-run business. They've been in business for almost 140 years, which is crazy to think of by itself. That's way back in 1881 when John A. Macdonald was the prime minister. Hunsinger's proudly serve all the communities of Haldimand, Norfolk, Six Nations, and Hamilton. They can be reached at 905-779-3444 or just visit their website at hunsingers.com.
Yeah, so 1881. Wow, that's a long time. We've gone through, I think it was 23 prime ministers since then, if it was John A. Macdonald back at the time. And I think Dave's the 5th generation of Hunsingers in the business, so they must be doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great family. The Hunsingers, they do work here for us at Jacasa, and they always deliver. And you mentioned Dave. He also works here at Jacasa. He's our crew chief for our track cleanup crew, and him and his gang do a great job.
Yeah, I bet they do. So that means when you say crew chief for the track cleanup, so that means if there's an accident, Hunsinger's on the job?
Yes, sir.
So it's really not a lot different than his business when somebody's
same
deal.
Same thing. I mean, that's a huge part of why he's heading up that cleanup crew. Those guys do a great job, and like you say, it's a total reflection on how they run their family business.
Yeah, that's great. So don't take our word for it. Just looking at some of the reviews online for Hunsingers, here's one here from Amanda. Thank you so much to Dave at Hunsingers. We returned from vacation to a cold house and a furnace not working. Dave was quick and efficient, leaving us without heat for only the shortest period of time. Thank you so much, Dave and Hunsingers, for your quality service and amazing response time. And I'm just going to read you one more from Jason and Tracy. We had water pump problems. 2 young men came and diagnosed the problem within minutes, and by the end of the day, we had a new pressure container for our pump. Fast work, left no mess, and knew exactly what they were doing. We'll definitely use this business again. Thank you so much. So there's 2 great testimonials that I just quickly found online about Hunsingers. So if you're looking for any HVAC work, plumbing, electrical, don't hesitate to call Hunsingers.
Well, Mark, we said right from the start doing this podcast that we would cover all forms of motorsports, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, etc., and different positions within the sport, as well. So it's our pleasure today to welcome longtime motorsports announcer and the host of the new TV show, REV Culture, on REV TV Canada, Mr. Todd Lewis.
Hi, Todd. Welcome to the Driver and Deep podcast. Having a guest of your caliber today, where do we start? You have covered so many different race series like NASCAR, TV for the NASCAR Pinty Series, IndyCar, Formula One, Indy Lights, Trans Am, Porsche GT3 Cup, Formula 3 and 4, and way more that I could even talk about now. My first question is, did you ever think that when you started in this industry that you would have covered so many different divisions of racing?
Not in a million years. Thanks for having me, by the way, guys. I've enjoyed the start of this new podcast venture, and I wish you well from someone who also has done a little podcasting, and it's a fun and enjoyable way to get to know and talk to people. So no, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I first started by being a persistent pain in the ass and getting myself an opportunity. So it was 1995 in CASCAR. And Jim Robinson, who was Joel Robinson's father, who runs the TV production now for the NASCAR Pinty Series, was producing the CASCAR series at the time. I was working in radio full time then, and I'd heard that they were looking for someone to work on the broadcasts as a pit reporter. And I called him, and he would not return my phone calls, which is something that happens quite often in terms of television and trying to get your foot in the door, because that's happened to me several steps along the way. So I called him, and he didn't return my phone calls, and I heard that I got a notice there was a media event at the start of the season, a media day where you get to meet the drivers and stuff. So I figured that he would probably be there, and he was. So I walked right up to him and I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, I'm Todd Lewis." And he said, "Oh yeah, you're the guy whose phone calls I've been dodging for the last couple of weeks." And I said, "You're right." And we had a great conversation, and it was fun. And by the end of the day, he agreed that, "Okay, well, I'll give you a shot. I'll let you do a couple of races this year, and we'll see if you can handle it." And I still remember the first race. My first interview was Mark Dilley. He was the defending champion, and I was petrified and having kittens as I'm trying to hold the microphone and not shake and interview Mark Dilley, who is the easiest guy in the world to talk to. He'll just go on forever. And I remember we had to do it a second time because Jim, who was behind the camera, said, "Don't look at me. Look right here. Look right into the lens." It's actually something I've never forgotten. And he said, "Don't look at me." And we had to do a second time because I wasn't looking directly into the camera. So that was the first time I worked a race. And it was, I can't believe where it's taken me. I owe so much to Jim and to everyone who's hired me to do so many different series. I've had so many great opportunities. It's taken me into different countries. It's taken me to different continents, and it's been quite a ride over 25 years.
Yeah, it's and you're still working with those guys. today.
That's the best part.
Not so much Jim, but Joel. And how cool is that after all this time?
That is the best part. And we've always operated the same way. It's kind of, yeah, you're good this year. It's kind of an ongoing thing. I still get nervous during the winter to make sure, yeah, we're going to have a series. It's going to be on TV, and I'm going to get to come back and do it again. But it's a very casual kind of. It was and I know 2020 was different, but it was, I think, at the end of the year when the races were done, that Joel said to me, by the way, I think I can pay you this for this year. Is this okay? And I went, yeah, that's fine. But that's kind of, that's the great relationship that we've built for so long, is having that comfort level and that trust in people. That's so important.
Yes, and you're waiting for Joel to tell you something. You and I both know he's waiting to find out what he's doing too, right? So, but you kind of struck a bit of a chord there. You kind of gave me a jab, and you didn't even know it, because you started in '95 with CASCAR Series. That's when we first met. Yes. And that was the first year we met each other and started to work with each other in the racing side of stuff. And you talked about your first interview being Dilly, and the defending champion, so the '94 champ.
Yes.
And he's a lucky bastard, and he knows it. He knows that, because so in '94, when you weren't involved yet, and you probably don't even know this story, but that year, so our first year at the AC Delco,
right?
We are leading at the Eastern and Western and National Championships at the time, right? Leading the Eastern Championship, leading the National Championship at Delaware for the final race of the year, leading the Delaware race. Not that many laps to go. I broke a $6 rocker arm. Dilly wins the truck, all the money. So that's why I say he's a lucky bastard. But good for him.
He didn't say that in the interview, by the way.
No, but thanks for bringing that up, Todd. That's awesome.
Sorry, that was not an intended jab, Alex.
Yeah, whatever. And also, you talked about when you first met Jim, and there's so many parallels in this industry, no matter what position you are. So me, a racer or a team owner, or you in the broadcasting side, and you talked about contacting Jim and never getting an answer. You finally met him, bam, there you are. It's the same for us guys on the sponsorship side, man. You're sending letters, you're phoning. I got a great story how the GM deal came about, and it's almost exactly the same as you said. And started with a guy, Bill Robinson at Robinson Stables, but that's another podcast. But just you talking about your start, there's just so many parallels between that, the broadcast side, and of course, what you went through.
Well, the other one is I did CASCAR for a number of years, and the Indy broadcast rights for Canada were changing from CBC to Global in 2001, which is about the time I started to work in racing full time as a freelancer, because I was turfed out of my radio gig. The company was sold. Actually, I'll go back even further. I was really frustrated, and the company was sold. They were waiting for approval for the new ownership to take over, and I had a real idiot program director at the time. I was working with another woman in the afternoon. We had just had a nearly 3-point rating increase in our latest rating book. We got a bonus because of it. And I don't know, a few weeks after that, the idiot program director came in and said, okay, I want to adjust things, and I want to do things differently, and I don't want you to talk as much. I say, and I'm thinking, we just increased your ratings by nearly 3 points in our time slot, and you now feel that you have to, anyhow. Funnily enough, we were all turfed out under new ownership, but that was my opportunity. I figured if I'm going to do this for a living, if I'm going to have a real opportunity to do it, now's the time. So I was doing the CASCAR at the time, and the broadcast rights for IndyCar in Canada had just changed. And it's getting into the spring, and they haven't announced who's working on the broadcast yet. So I called Global Television, called the main switchboard number and said, hey, look, here's my name. Here's what I'm interested in. Here's what I want to do. And I wish I knew the woman's name who answered. She said, okay, I think I know who to put you through to. Puts me through to the someone in charge of programming, and I left a voicemail message. Again, huge stroke of luck. That person called me back. I wasn't at home. I was probably working or doing something. Called me back and left me the name of the producer of the race broadcast. It was through a company called Molestar at the time. They used to produce a lot of hockey.
Right.
And so the gentleman's name was Ed Milliken. So I called Ed right away and I said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've been doing. He said, well, I pretty much got our crew all set. And I don't know if you want to come in and talk to me, I'll listen, but I'm pretty much set. When do you want to talk? Well, I'm leaving town tomorrow. I said, I'll be in this afternoon. So I went in, drove and had a conversation with him and didn't get the impression that I was going to get the job. 2 days later, 3 days later, there was a phone message left for me. Okay, I'll hire you. Here's what it is. So in 2001, that was the first Indy in Toronto. It was the Molson Indy in Toronto then that I worked. And that was the last Molson Indy that Michael Andretti won. It was his 7th. He had just changed teams to move to a Honda team. He got turned around in corner 3 on the first lap of the race, made I don't know how many pit stops, came back, drove through the field, and won the race. It was unbelievable. That was my first IndyCar event.
Wow.
Great start.
Wow. Well, speaking of starts, and to sort of put her back in first gear a little bit here, did you pursue an education to achieve your goals as a broadcaster, and how did you know you wanted to be a broadcaster?
Well, I was exposed to it through my dad, who was in the radio business for a lot of years. And I went to Mohawk College in Hamilton and took a radio broadcasting program, which I never graduated from. I'm I don't know, 2 or 3 classes short. But during my second year, or no, it was late in the first year, I got an opportunity. There was a part-time job at a station in Simcoe to work on weekends. So I was going to school Monday to Friday, and I was working Saturdays and Sundays at CHNR in Simcoe. It was an AM radio station then. And so I would work, I actually had a job that paid better that I quit so I could go and do that. That's how crazy things were. But I did that. That was my first radio job. So I did that while I was going to school, and then I started part-time afterwards and evolved into assorted full-time roles in radio before. But I was at the point in radio where it was kind of, as I said, I was kind of frustrated, and I had dabbled in auto racing in the summer a little bit, doing 2 or 3 or 4 events. And I was like, I want to do more and I want to do more. So that's when I got fired and terminated with 23 other people, I think, on the same day. So I got a severance I got a severance package. So it's like, okay, I've got a little bit of time now. If this is going to happen, I've got to make it happen. So I was doing CASCAR series. That's when I got into IndyCar at the same time. So I was doing that. And at the same time, I got a part-time gig doing sports talk radio. So it was a bunch of little things that all worked together for a while that got me going in that direction.
What station were you at in Hamilton?
I was at 900 CHML, which is now Global News Radio CHML, and I worked on Y95 in Hamilton, which is now Y108. So yeah. It was we had some fun times and there were some fun years, but then it evolved into some real silly choices and decisions that were made, all on the basis of trying to save money.
Yeah, because when you started doing the CASCAR stuff, I recall now, thinking back that at that time I think you were at Y95.
Yes, I was.
Yeah, because I could remember, I get to hear you during the week too, which I don't. At the time, I didn't think it was that great, but of course now I do.
I'm dating both of us by going back that far, though, aren't I, Alex?
Yeah, well, that's why it was hard for me to remember because I was only 5 or 6.
Right? Yeah.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I am substantially older, but yeah.
Mark mentioned about all the different types of series, and it'd be crazy to get past them all. We know CASCAR stuff.
Yeah.
Before we even talk about this. You're bugging Mr. Robinson about a job. Was it just to be a broadcaster, or were you a huge motorsports fan or become one at the time?
I was interested in it, but I didn't grow up with it. Like nobody in my family was involved in it. We didn't go to races or anything like that. I started watching it and I became interested in it, and I've been to a couple of races, but not a lot. I went to a few, went to Flamborough, went to Cayuga, now Jukasa, and did that a little bit. But it was the 1992 Indy 500 with Scott Goodyear and Al Unser that I watched and was captivated with. Closest finish in IndyCar history. And Scott Goodyear, who came from last in the field and within a whisker of winning it. And I was just so captivated by the story and, the history of Indy and all the others and stuff. And I actually did a feature on those two, and I interviewed both of them on the 25th anniversary, which was so cool. But
that's awesome.
that was sort of the point where I said, you know what, if I could combine something that I do get paid for with something that I like and I'm interested in, that would be the ultimate.
Yeah, that's great. So I always wondered about that. I've thought about that different times talking to you. Mm-hmm. I knew about your start, but I didn't, I always wondered if you were an actual motorsport fan at the time or you're just trying to get into broadcasting. And it's great. I mean, the cool part is that you become such a huge fan because now you're a great broadcaster. You've done a bunch of different stuff, but you can't be a great broadcaster without having a passion for the sport, which you do. And I can tell our listeners that know that, but honestly, your passion is huge.
There's no place better to spend time than at a racetrack and hanging around. And there's even a point this past year in May where everybody had been cooped up for a while with COVID and everything. And I probably shouldn't say too much, but also I will say that I was aware of a team that was out legally and they went to a track to test, and they had the right amount of guys and they were all social distance and the like, but I had been cooped up for so long and I've been here at home, and it's just like, I said, hey, there's a team testing and I want to go. And it's like, go get out of the house, just go and, spend a few hours there. And I can't tell you how much better I felt after spending a little time there. Brought the guys lunch, and it was just the way to be there. That's I get that feeling every year. In fact, right about this time, as soon as the calendar flips to January, okay, now it's going to be racing season. If I were in Florida, as I often have been at this time of year, I'd be itching to go to Sebring over the next couple of days, because there's teams that are going to be testing, and then they're going to be at Daytona and then Sebring, and it's just it all starts, and it just starts to build up.
Right. And I wonder where that track was in the spring of this year or 2020.
I wasn't sure if I should say, Alex, but
no, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't want to get those folks in trouble.
No, but I do know it was within driving distance of where I'm located. So yeah. So
I'm surprised, because I guess this is going to spill the beans, but I'm not sure I got lunch.
I brought enough. I did bring enough. I absolutely did. So, because I think there were 6 or 7 people allowed, and I brought like a dozen sandwiches. So I had it covered.
All right. Maybe I just got the shaft, I guess.
Maybe.
So listen, with all the different series you've gotten into, of course, we know now CASCAR, IndyCar.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on what I had something I wanted to ask you, and you touched on it earlier, I believe. My question was going to be, was it all North America? But I heard you say you did some different countries as well. So what different countries did you go to? What did you cover? All those series, man. There's so many great series that you've worked with.
Yeah.
Just like when I go racing, or I've been racing, there's so many different stories that if you ever have me on a podcast, I can tell you, but it's not the place right now. So, talk a little bit about all those cool series. And of course, we want to hear the good stuff too, buddy.
I don't know. Okay. So all the series are unbelievable. All over the US, all over Canada. I've been to Monterey. I worked in IndyCar race and okay. So here's a good one. So I worked the IndyCar series in Monterey when Andrew Ranger was driving his 2 years, his rookie year in IndyCar. And it was the second race, I believe the second race of the season in Monterrey, Mexico. And I got hired to work on the big U.S. broadcast and everything on that one. And he was on the podium in second place. And so it was kind of funny that two Canadians are working at the U.S. broadcast of this in Monterrey. Now, the furthest I have ever gone to cover a race is South Africa. And it was about 10 years ago. Maybe a little longer, but it was about 10 years ago. The ASA group was hired by a group in South Africa. They shipped over a bunch of cars, stock cars. They were kind of about I would say, Xfinity-ish series cars. And they had a couple of guys from the U.S. come over. Jeff Bodine would have been the most notable, who went over. And they raced against a number of South African racers. Now, this was at a 1.5-mile oval that was modeled after Texas. The track was in Welkom, South Africa. It's about an hour and a half or 2 hour. No, it's even further than that. It's a couple of 3 hours south of Johannesburg. So I got a phone call, and it's like, hey, interested in having you go and be part of a team to broadcast tape delayed for North America. Sure, I'll do it. Turns out I was the only one that went over. I was producer, I was director, I was the sound guy. I did everything. I was the only one from North America that they sent. Again, tight budgets. But it was an amazing experience.
So in this case, there was an Iron team in this case then.
Yeah. there is an Iron team. You're right, Mark. But it was just to go and you fly for 16 hours to get to Johannesburg. Then you drive, and it's a 24-hour odyssey. And the trip was only a week long. So you get there, and it's like, oh, and by the way, you got to do some stuff for South African television because they're helping us with the production and stuff. So I was working for both. And I got paid peanuts, but it didn't matter because again, as you find at every racetrack, is you always meet some great people. You hear some great stories. There's that was the start of social media really becoming popular. So you become friends and you stay in touch through social media, Facebook and stuff. And it was just it was a great experience just to talk about. And if you do happen to talk to someone or send them a message or something, that was amazing. Wasn't that fun? Wouldn't you love to do that again? Yeah, I would. And you do it in a heartbeat again, just because it was so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those that must have been. So I got to ask you, when you're on the plane and you're heading down there, were you still expected to meet up with your team when you got there? Did they tell you by then?
By then, I had become aware that I was the one man. Gotcha. The only thing I didn't do was operate the camera, and that was because it really wouldn't have been. They didn't have selfie sticks back then. Otherwise, I probably would have had to do that too. But it's so strange. But just to meet people, and it's funny because when you're interviewing people, and you were good about this, Alex. You understood that. When I'm talking to you and I'm interviewing you, is we have to stand within arm's length and the camera faces us. But a lot of guys, when they get out of a car often, but there are some people just are naturally fidgety and they start to move and walk away. So I don't know how many times in Victory Lane interviews, I grab the driver by the back. And I have to hold him in place. This is one of the things that nobody thinks about is just, So I'm holding them in place because they're trying to get away or they're just fidgety or still have the adrenaline going or they want to celebrate with their team. But I have to hold on to guys. And it's a little bit gross because after you've been in the seat for a couple of hours, the suit and everything, it's a little, it's a little funky, especially on some of those hot days. But yeah, that's one of the little things that you have to do.
Yeah, so it's funny you said that because our buddy Joel Robinson, when he would do the in-car camera or whatever I had in the car, or he was doing stuff, he'd always lean in. And I had this classic old Bell open-face helmet that was handed down to me from Randy Slack when we first got going with Sam and them. And, of course, I'm a sweater. And I can't even think of how many times there's Robinson in the passenger side window. He's right in beside the shifter and he's doing the camera by my head, and he'd look over at me and say, Jesus, Nagy, throw that helmet out. And, and so it's a running joke. I still have the helmet. And I keep telling Joel when he comes back to Chickasha to do the Pinty Series broadcast, I keep telling him I bagged it and I'm going to bring it over here and I'm going to introduce it to him again. And
nice.
He almost turns green. That's how bad it was. It must have been quite a nightmare for him. You know, I took a jab at our buddy Dilly earlier, and he knows I'm kidding. But you talked about fidgety drivers, and you said that, you know, I was okay, and I understood. So I thought right away against old Hall of Famer buddy of mine, Donnie Thompson. He must have been a handful.
Goodness gracious, yes, he was. He's such a great guy, nice guy. And if you're having a conversation with him, he's easy and it's relaxed and comfortable. But the minute you get within 6 feet of him and have a microphone in your hand, he is a bundle of nerves and doesn't want to have. He does it, and I thank him and I give him all the credit in the world, because it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, and I understand it's difficult for people, but to get nervous, and that's one of the things that I've tried to do and is so hard sometimes is I'm not there to interrogate people. I'm trying to help tell their story. I want to tell their story, and it's not a, this isn't 60 Minutes or anything like that. We're here to have fun. And I'll often say to guys now, so what do you want to talk about? If we're doing it just an interview, or what do you want to talk about? I don't care. It can be anything, just to try to help them relax and be at ease. Yeah. But it's so funny the way things happen. And I guess that's where the strangest stuff happens in the, one of the things being that as you know, when race cars are finished, the event, they're very warm, they're very hot. There was one race at Cayuga that the driver came in and drove across the grass to the small little asphalt part where we were set up for Victory Lane, and it's a lot more organized than it was. It used to be just complete chaos after races, no matter what the series. They're a lot more orchestrated and organized now. But the car was hot, so it set some of the grass on fire. Wasn't a big fire, but there was enough that it was a noticeable fire. So it was kind of a quick interview. But the other thing is that the tires on open wheel cars get very hot. So it was 2002. Dario Franchitti won in Vancouver at the Vancouver Indy that I was doing. So, and again, it's chaos. Everybody wants to get in. He and Greg Moore were great friends, and it was the year after Greg was killed, and he was very emotional. And it is a swarm of people, and I am pressed up against his car, and I'm leaning in kind of over the car, trying to stick the microphone in his face so I can do the victory interview. About halfway through his first sentence to me, I realize that my leg is pressed up against the left front tire of his car. And it is getting hotter and hotter. And I'm kind of thinking, I really hope this is not going to be a long answer, because I'm not sure that my suit is going to be with me when I try to step back away from this car. But yes, I had begun to adhere to his left front tire. But it's just, these are the kind of weird things that happen. And was a year later? I think it was a year later. Same thing in Vancouver too. Paul Tracy won that year. And he was, it was that year or the next year. He was on a real weird fuel strategy. They didn't get his car full in the last stop, so he was going to have to make an extra stop. So he's just blistering, doing qualifying laps, goes through, wins the race, and he does donuts in corner one because he's not sure he's going to make a full victory lap afterwards. Victory podium is at pit in, and Paul is at pit out near turn one. So I am running down pit lane to try to get to Paul Tracy to interview him before we go off the air. And he starts slowly meandering back. I made it about 2/3 of the way down, and I am gasping for breath and trying to get a question out to him. And it's just, I got a question out, he answered it, and they went to the other pit reporter who was with the second or third place driver. I am doubled over in pit lane trying to catch my breath, like after a running back who's done 100 yards. And so it was crazy, the stuff that happens sometimes.
Yeah. And, that's one of the cool things about having you on. We want to get we want to reach, I want our listeners to learn a bit about the sport, the industry, not just race car stuff for race or motorcycles, but, behind the scenes stuff. And, we all watch broadcasts and stuff that you do and everybody else. And I think a lot of us know there's more to it than that. But, on the surface, hearing what you have to go through in your business, it just goes to show you, man, it's not as easy as it looks, as you people make it look on TV or make it sound on radio. I mean, you guys do a great job getting to that point, going over, hopping over all those hurdles, hiding the ones that maybe go sideways. We don't hear the interviews or the interview that didn't happen when Paul Tracy or Alex Nagy or whoever told you to go, they're not talking, maybe Danica Patrick, or maybe she was going to throw her crew under the bus or something like that. But so I'm so glad we got you on for that reason, because there's so much more to learn. And I know Mark's got something we want to talk about here, but I just wanted to put that in because it's a great part of the sport.
Yeah, it occasionally drivers do challenge you if you ask them a question, but it's heat of the moment, it's adrenaline, it's sports, it's the way it happens, and it really doesn't.
So it makes it great.
It doesn't bother me. It's just I'm asking the question, and sometimes I understand that you're going to bite back at me, and it happens. Usually, if it does, though, I don't know, the next week or at a point in the future, we'll have a conversation about it, and it's fine. Right. It's not personal. But sometimes I'll ask a question that people don't like, and they'll fight back a little bit, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't. I have pretty thick skin.
Well, one thing I know for sure is that we don't have to worry about burning our suits or our legs on any tires with the podcast here. I think the worst thing that we have to deal with is maybe somebody flushing the toilet or a dog barking.
Did you hear my dog, by the way?
Was that I thought that was mine.
Oh, I thought it was mine.
Oh, who knows? One of our dogs barked, but it's a little safer environment here. Anyway, Todd, so you've done so much media over the years, announcing, radio, now podcasts, TV. Is there anything that you have in your sights right now that you want to do in your career before you're done?
Well, I know one thing he's got in his sights, and he's doing it right now. So I want you to tell us about your latest venture, and then what else is on your bucket list.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. The latest venture is a new show called REV Culture that airs on REV TV in Canada. We've done 4 episodes. We did them at the end of 2020 as kind of a year in review. We're just actually discussing the next flight of episodes. We're planning on going as a weekly, and we're just trying to figure out exactly when we're going to be able to start, because we're still navigating the whole landscape of events being postponed and all the rest of it. But it will be a weekly show, which I'm really looking forward to. So the great part about that is it is going to incorporate a lot of the things that I do want to do and had hoped to do. Though we want to tell stories of Canadians, motorsports people, not just drivers, mechanics, driver coaches, team owners, sponsors, partners, and in all aspects of motorsports, not just in auto racing too, but we did a few segments on motorcycle racing, Supercross as part of REV Culture in the year in review. So we've done some segments on sim racing and iRacing, which is becoming a bigger part of it as well. So we'll do that, but it's all about people and stories and history and passion and traditions and culture, which was how we kind of came up with the name REV Culture. So it's motorsports oriented, it's motorsports focused, and a lot of stories about Canadians. So I wish I could tell you exactly what the date is that we're going to start as a weekly on REV TV, but I can't yet. But there will be new episodes coming in February, and it will become a weekly series. One of the things, and we still haven't sorted out exactly how we'll incorporate it, but I have told people for years that I have always wanted to do a cooking show. I love to cook myself, and will watch Food Network and food cooking shows, and I've always wanted to do a cooking show. I've never really come close, but there will be food sort of segments in REV Culture, so that'll satisfy me a little bit. But that's one thing that I've always wanted to do. In terms of other bucket list things, I get to work in motorsports and racing. I've evolved into helping teams and drivers and organizations a little bit now. I do social media stuff and so some marketing and promotion kind of stuff. I've done some of that. I do more track announcing now than I've ever done. I've always did broadcast before, but now I'm doing more track announcing at different events as well. The one thing I'll say is that if I can keep doing this kind of stuff, however it evolves, and some of it's with a plan, most of it is not. If I can keep doing this and not have to get a real job, then I win the game. That is the honest to goodness serious thing. It's being involved in motorsports and racing has allowed me to do so many other things into other areas, and a lot of it is luck. I gladly work endless hours because it's so much fun, and I get to work with such great people, doing video, doing social media, doing television broadcast work and team work, and some writing things that I've done as well. And it allowed me to evolve into other sports as well, which was hockey in terms of television and radio and podcasting as well. So it's just been, but that all came from motorsports.
That's great. We wanted to cover the REV Culture, Todd. How did that come about? I just wondered how was it something that you dreamt up? You reached out to the folks at REV, kind of a joint thing, or did you pitch it? I love the approach. I think the show is awesome. So I just wondered how it came to fruition.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's been a long time in discussion. We wanted to do, talking to Mike Garrow and Rick Pereira, who were the two principals at REV TV, and they're great guys, super to work with. We talked about it in different approaches in different ways for a long time. And the one we just kind of, after a number of discussions on the phone, in person, we came up with this plan and this approach that, it will cover events of the week and look back at major stories from the week in terms of, but we didn't want it to be just a results show, because everybody gets the results so quickly and so immediately now in terms of highlights. That'll be a portion of it, but let's go a couple of steps farther. What are the implication of the results? What's the story of a driver who won his first race? How long did it take to get there? Is there another story that goes with it? What about a young and up and coming driver? One of the people we had on was Raphael Lessard, who's now back in the truck series for his second full season coming up in 2021. He's a terrific story. And there's others as well. Tony Stewart, I had a great conversation with him for about 25 minutes that we had to cut down a little bit. And I hope we can put the full interview up, because he talked about different series, but he talked about his sprint cars, how much he works, and his days at drag racing school that he's done recently. And so it was so much fun. But these are the kind of stories. It's not just, here's who won in the NASCAR race and here's who won in Formula One or IndyCar or whichever series. It's a lot more, and especially getting the people on themselves to tell the stories is going to be a lot more fun.
Yeah. If we left this part out, man, it'd be a shame, because I don't have to tell you this, but every time we're racing somewhere, me and you end up talk about something else, and it's always hockey. And I know you touched a little bit on some hockey stuff that you did throughout this interview, and I know there's a lot more to it. But the cool part is you're a Habs fan, I'm a Leafs fan, so we jab at each other once in a while. And then now you've met Mark, that poor old bugger over there. He's a Sabres fan, so we have to cut him a bit of a break there. We're going to talk about a podcast that you're doing right now that's really cool, and I know Mark and I have both listened to it. Hockey's also a big part of your broadcast career. Talk a little bit about that.
It absolutely is. I was asked, and I get asked still, if you had to choose one, which would you choose? It's a Sophie's choice. It's almost impossible. I started in motorsports, which led to an opportunity to do hockey things. And funnily enough, the producer who hired me to do the Molson Indies in Toronto was the key to my getting a hockey job. The producer of the NHL Network, which used to be in Canada and is now only available in the US, they were hiring. They got their license in September and they went on the air in October. And it's like, okay, we need people to work, including all the production staff and everything. And it was partially owned by TSN at the time, and they didn't even have office space. So they parked office trailers in the parking lot for us to use. And we used the Canada AM studio for our hockey show at night, and then they literally turned it around and they used it for Canada AM for CTV in the mornings. We didn't even have our own set. So I was one of the first 2 hosts that was hired for that. The executive producer was looking through tapes, saw one that I had sent in, and called the producer of the Molson Indy in Toronto and said, "Hey, what about this guy? Is he a good guy? Do you know him?" And he said, "Yes." He gave me a good recommendation. And he was great that he gave me a call and gave me a heads up that said the guy from the NHL Network is going to call you. Unfortunately, it didn't come until after the call from the NHL Network came and said, "Hey, we'd like you to come in and audition." I said, "Yeah, sure, okay." So I went in to audition, and they said, "Okay, we're going to sit you here at the desk, and you'll voice over some highlights." For those that aren't aware, is when you see the highlights on TV, the announcers will read a script that is off camera. And so they said, "Well, you'll read some highlights. You'll do a little Q&A with an analyst." I said, "Okay, fine, sure, let's give it a try." Had never read highlights before in my life, never done it, and it's like, "Do you want to see the highlights before you read them?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Why not? That's probably a good idea." So they showed me the highlight pack, which is about 2.5 minutes long. And I'm looking at the script and I said, "All right, let's give it a try." Did the little segment with the announcer, the analyst that was there. And it was, "Okay, great. Thanks a lot for coming in." And I figured, okay, I'm never getting this job, but it was a good experience. It was cool. 2 days later, phone rings. "Hey, would you be interested in signing on and being one of our hosts?" Okay, well, let's meet and talk about it. So I'm making it a long story, but so we met at a bar, the executive producer and I, Rick Briggs Jude, and he said, "Okay, well, I want you to come and be a host." I said, "Well, I'm trying to do more auto racing and stuff. Would I be able to do that? The Indies are on Global and I'm doing this other stuff." And he said, "Yeah, you're going to have to give all that up." And I said, "Well, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to say no to you." I said, "Unless, can I work freelance? Like, I don't work for you. You just pay me to be one of your hosts, and I'll do all the work, but you don't hire me as an employee." And we thought about it and talked about it. And he said, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that." So that was how I got started in hockey. And we used to, surf to all the games, and I got to go to the Winter Classic, and I go to the All-Star game and do all kinds of other stuff. The
draft.
I worked the NHL draft, which was, which is great. So, the NHL draft with a player who had a name in Columbus, who was drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning, 3rd round, I want to say. You guys can decide if you want to leave this in or not.
Yeah.
The player drafted, his name is Luca Kunti. And so I get to interview him. And in my ear, because when you're on television, everybody wears an earpiece so that the producers and the directors and everyone can talk to you and tell you which camera's on and what you're going to next. The producer in my ear, as I'm interviewing Luca Kunti, said to me, "Be very, very careful." Be very, very, and that's all he is saying throughout the entire interview. So just one of the things that you do. But yeah, so I worked the NHL draft. And other things. I moved on. I did for a couple of years. I worked on Sirius satellite radio. I did a show for a couple of seasons with Phil Esposito. I know, Hab and a Bruin, right? Habs fan. He's a Bruin, but anyhow. But he was great. So I would do that in the afternoon, and I would work at the NHL Network at night, and then do racing stuff during racing season. So it's allowed me to do a lot of things. But that became possible because of all the motorsport stuff I was doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the opportunity.
Well, I will say it's a darn good thing that Luca's name wasn't Michael. Alex, since you never let me get a word in here, I would also like to comment about your Sabres comment there and just remind you.
Sorry, buddy.
It's not how you start a season, it's how you finish, okay?
That's been your unfortunate. Listen, that's been your downfall.
They've finished out of the playoffs for 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah. Well,
I'm here to help.
Mark, you might want to move on, buddy.
Yeah.
They're I don't know if they'll be better this year. Is Taylor Hall going to stay? I don't know. I think they may end up trading him, but
He did say he wanted to sign a long-term deal. We'll see. I guess it depends on how they're doing before the trade deadline.
I guess.
It'd be a shame that if they don't get the supporting staff around or supporting players around Eichel, because he deserves it. He's one hell of a hockey player.
He's a terrific hockey player, and unfortunately, he's not getting enough recognition for how good he is because of the lack of success of the Sabres, and they haven't had. You're right, a supporting cast. But you know what they need more than anything? They need a goalie. Get a goalie, and that'll be a much better team.
I agree.
Same with Edmonton.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to what we were talking about, and although this is a podcast for motorsports, I want to talk a little bit about your podcast, scoutingtherefs.com. And like Alex mentioned, I've also recently discovered your podcast, and I can't tell you how much I really enjoy it. There's so much information from behind the scenes. Really, it's about the third team that's out on the ice that nobody really knows about, and that's the plan, but how much goes into it. And on top of that, the website, scoutingtherefs.com, has so much information. I had no idea. Everything from the current news of what's happening with rules and officials and so on. But there's all the information you could ever want about historical team challenges and the results and who the officials for tonight's games are going to be. I'm a former hockey referee myself. I did it for the better part of 2 decades. And I have to say, in particular, I really enjoyed the discussion with yourself and your co-host Josh about the new high-tech pucks that are now being used in the NHL, and also the Fox 40 whistles. These pucks have the ability to really ensure that the right calls are made. We were watching the Ottawa-Toronto game the other night, and I think it was Zach Hyman that directed a puck in that looked pretty close to being a high stick. You know, they look at it from so many different angles, and you don't know where the camera heights are or whether it's on line with the crossbar or not. These pucks would absolutely give you the information you need to make the exact right call. And in my opinion, I have to agree with Josh that this is the way they should go. And I know it's pretty dramatic in terms of changing the game and how they might do this, but I hope they're really looking at that because I feel that it's better to get the right call. And nowadays, I mean, the game is so fast, so much emphasis on fitness and speed and so on. And even the referees are in incredible shape. But the last time I checked, your eyes don't change. And now with this technology, I really hope to see that they use it for these types of things.
Mark, I'm glad that you've become a fan of that podcast too. Josh Smith is my co-host, and he's the guy who does all the work on the website, scoutingtherefs.com. He is an encyclopedia in terms of referees and officiating knowledge. He puts up all the stats, just as you would find for players and teams on game previews and the like. How many games they've played, how many average penalties the referees call per game. All that's available on the website for not just the NHL, but he does it for the AHL, or will once they get rolling again, the ECHL too, and has all kinds of other interesting stories as well. He's the one who does all of that. Josh I found him on social media, and he used to come on and be a guest with me on my radio program on Sirius XM when I was doing that for a while, a couple of years back. And it was always one of our best segments. And just because he gave you the information and explained the rules and why calls are made, the kind of thing that the NHL should actually be doing. It became a great education tool for listeners and people that watch the game to understand why a certain call is made and how certain calls are made, from the positioning of the officials and the like. I agree with you that will be the way of the future, whether or not a puck has crossed the goal line, whether or not a play was onside or offside, that can all be tracked with the new chips in the pucks and the puck and player tracking. It's a matter of being able to do it on a quick and efficient manner. Now, I understand that everybody whines about video review, but if you can do it in a quick and efficient manner and not have to go through 3 teams of lawyers the way the league seems to want to do everything, then it will be done in a quick and smooth manner that will keep the game moving along. You're right, you don't want to shut down for 5 minutes, but if you use this technology, you won't have to shut down for 5 minutes to do a video review, because they know exactly where the puck is within the arena at any given moment. So it's a fun podcast to do, and we try to have a few laughs with it and stuff too. But it just kind of gives a little insight into how the officiating world works and how the league works, and again, much like motorsports and the NHL and hockey and stuff, the referees and linesmen that work are terrific people as well, and you're happy to spend time with them at any opportunity.
I really can't wait to see how the NHL decides how to deal with all this data that they're collecting with this. And the other segment that I found really, it was kind of personal for me, was the segment on the new whistles. Mm-hmm. The NHL now has gone to the new Fox 40 whistles. And for me, I started refereeing hockey in 1982. There was only one choice for a whistle back in the day, and that was the Acme Thunderer. And I think there was two sizes. I like the narrow mouth. It has nothing to do with the size of your mouth, Alex, just so in case you want to comment.
That's apparent.
It had to do with the tone and the pitch of the whistle. And I know that the P's in the whistles, that sometimes, especially in different temperatures and environments, that can be a problem. I personally never had any issues. I always had some backups. I made sure I swapped them out. I mean, they were $10 kind of thing. But what I will say is that the Acme Thunderer, because of that P, I felt it was almost like an instrument in your mouth. You could really inflect how you felt by the way you blew the whistle and the tone that you used, and you would learn how to do that over the hundreds and thousands of times you had to blow a whistle over your career. And I tried the Fox 40 when I was younger, and although it was guaranteed to work every time, it felt more like a basketball whistle. And it was. That's how it started out, in a football whistle. And it didn't really resonate with either the officials or the players or even the fans as much. But now if you listen to the new version of the Fox 40 that they have, or that they're using in the NHL, they seem to have fixed the tone a little bit at least. And it sounds quite good, in my opinion.
It sounds better. It's not exactly the same as the other whistles. This one it's called the Call, CAUL, named after John McCauley.
Yes.
for that they're using, and it's about as close as you're going to get with having the different technology. And the thing is that it always works, and that was the most important thing. So I guess it's the progress that you have to be able to adapt to a slightly different tone and get used to it. It's funny how whatever it is, whether it's motorsports, whether it's hockey or anything else, it's just people are so reluctant to adapt to change and just, I like things just the way they are inside my nice little lane here. But that's once you venture outside that's where the fun and the excitement starts too. And that's what I found doing this.
Yeah. Well, Todd, I think you and Josh are doing a really great job with scouting the refs. And I do encourage anybody out there that is also a hockey fan to check out your podcast and check out the website, scoutingtherefs.com. It'll really give you a great perspective on that third team that's out there on the ice during a hockey game.
They deserve a lot of credit for all the work that they do. So, but it's fun. I'm glad you guys had me on this particular show. It's been a lot of fun to talk about and think back over the years to so many great races, so many great people that you got to meet and get to know and have so much fun with. There's always a good day at the racetrack, even on rainy days that you're angry and you're frustrated that you can't go, and it still beats having a real job. And again, I keep falling back to that. If I don't want to ever have to get a real job, because I've been in an office, I've worked in an office through regular hours and stuff. It's not good for the people around me to be around me, and it's far better for me to be out doing what I love to do.
Well, I can relate, Todd, because I hope I don't have to get a real job either. And but I can tell you, rain delays and rainouts sitting in this chair now suck a lot worse than when I was a racer. I'll tell you that. But that's another podcast for sure.
That's a different thing. So, but again, that's the new area that you ventured into over the last couple of years too. And this is a new challenge. This is a new opportunity. And that's how I looked at, okay, we want you to do this, or I want to do this series, or I'm going to do more track and PA announcing or social media. It's still within the sport that we all love so much. It's just you get to try new things and do new things in different areas as well. So there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's kind of invigorating.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of things that we can do in this industry, little shoots off of what we do every day. So it's exciting. And that's why it's one of the greatest sports in the world for sure. And like you say, I mean, I know I'm not going to speak for Mark, but man, it was great to have you. You're the consummate pro. To let people inside a little bit of the stuff you guys go through or girls go through on your side of the business was fun to talk about. And of course, anytime you can tie it in with a little bit of hockey, there's nothing wrong with that. So, here's looking to a great 2021 for all of us and in both industries, primarily the racing industry. It got hit pretty hard last year. So, hopefully we're going to get through this pandemic here very shortly. And, a lot of positives. I know everybody's, champing at the bit to get rolling here, from teams to partners to racetracks, et cetera, and media. And I think, hopefully we can get through this the first part of the year and have an excellent season. Man, it's been great having you. We appreciate you taking the time. Maybe you can tell everybody where they can find you if they want to look you up.
Absolutely. I look forward to checking out more of your podcasts, and really interested to hear some numbers from 3 Fog as well. That would be I look forward to that in the future.
Maybe
Alex won't let me.
Cool. If you want to hear more.
That'd
be great.
Alex vetoed 3 Fog from this podcast. So.
Okay. If you choose to follow me on the social media channels, Twitter and Instagram, it is at Todd Lewis Sports. On both Twitter and Instagram. The new program is REV Culture, and on Twitter, Instagram, there's a Facebook page as well. It's at REV Culture TV. The new shows there will be more new shows in February. It will be a weekly show on REV TV, premiering at 9 p.m. Eastern on Monday nights, talking about all things motorsports and the culture of motorsports, the passion, the traditions, and so much more. And hopefully at a lot of racetracks this year. I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to getting back to covering the NASCAR Pinty Series, IndyCar events, and who knows what else I'll get up to. I had a great time doing some Avion Motorsports RS1 Series events last year. I know I'm going to do more stuff with them this coming season as well. So that's going to mean more time in Western Canada, and that's a pretty nice part of the world to spend some time in as well. So, but this has been a lot of fun, guys. Anytime you want me to come and talk about and tell more stories, I'm happy to do it.
Thanks very much. We really appreciate it.
Well, another great podcast, Mark.
I agree. Todd's a great guy. Really enjoyed talking with him.
Yeah, he brings a lot to our sport, as you can tell. And, the fact that he likes hockey and racing is great for you and me. But anyways, how can our listeners interact with us two online?
Well, for our listeners, we'd like to ask you to tell your friends to find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever else they listen to their favorite podcasts. We would really appreciate it. And please subscribe so you always have the latest updates. And hey, if you guys like us, a thumbs up or a 5-star review on Apple would go a long way. And Alex, why don't you tell our listeners how they can join the conversation online?
Yeah, absolutely. With our website is easy. It's just simply wingnutsports.com. Instagram at wingnutsports. If you go to our Facebook group, if you go to Facebook and just search Wingnut Sports, our group will come up there. If you want to email either one of us, wingnutsports@gmail.com. And on Twitter, you can get to you at WNSMark. And for me, Nags_Alex.
And if you do visit our website at wingnutsports.com, don't forget to check out our show notes. You'll find links to our content and maybe a surprise here and there.
This has been the Driver in Deep podcast with your host, Mark, and myself, Alex.